Fanatic Radio is America's premier sports music program.
It's an essential part of our society, like hot dogs and Cadillacs.
With Mike Gardner and Ben Florence providing unique insight from the wide world of sports.
He should just retire so we can dip him in bronze and ship him to the Hall of Fame.
Playing only the hottest music.
The only thing we ever play on the show is Motown and R&B.
And always striving for perfection.
We're climbing the ladder to success, escalator style. Yes!
See for yourself. Check out Fanatic Radio, only on Blog Talk Radio.
Fanatic Radio Hotline by David Wharton of the LA Times. We did talk about some America's Cup last week. Had a big historic win. And now he joins us on the hotline to discuss the whole fiasco of what happened in San Francisco. And David, was this your first time covering an America's Cup event?
Yeah, it sure was. We haven't paid a lot of attention to this in the past, but with it being in San Francisco, this time I think it got a little bit more attention.
And how was the atmosphere, I guess, in the span of 2 weeks, or maybe even 3 weeks of the Louis Vuitton Cup?
You know, at first I think it wasn't that great. People in San Francisco didn't quite know what to make of it. It's a big sailing town, but I think they were a little underwhelmed at first. You have to remember the America's Cup also has a Challenger Series, so they were racing out in the bay for pretty much the entire summer. And there was a lot of controversy at first, a lot of bumps along the road for this America's Cup, and so the atmosphere started out a little weak, but it sure peaked at the end when the U.S. team started coming back.
What sort of controversy happened before?
Well, first of all, you know, within the sailing world, there were a lot of people upset that if your listeners aren't familiar with it, the the America's Cup has kind of strange rules, so that the team that's holding the cup, the defender, gets to decide where to hold the next America's Cup and what kind of boats they're going to race. And so Larry Ellison, the tech billionaire, his boat had won it in 2010. He decided they were going to come into the San Francisco Bay. They usually do it way out to sea, and they were going to race these big, sleek catamarans that go 4 times faster than the traditional monohull boats, and so the traditional yachts they use. So a lot of people were upset about that, a lot of the traditionalists. And then early on, a Swedish boat capsized in the bay, and it killed a very popular sailor, Andrew Simpson, who had been a big sailor from Britain. And then the Oracle Team USA boat also flipped. No one was hurt, but they destroyed a boat out there. People were saying these boats were too expensive. They were too dangerous. They were making a mockery of the America's Cup. So there were a lot of people who didn't think much of this. The whole time, the Oracle team, Larry Ellison, was saying, hey, listen, the America's Cup needs to change. It's not relevant. It's not exciting anymore. We need to bring some excitement in. So there was kind of that battle going on for the first few months of the America's Cup.
And he certainly did. But what are your thoughts on the AC-72?
You know, I'll tell you, when you see them in person, they're pretty amazing. I had the opportunity to not to sail on one, but to climb aboard one day and check it out, and then to watch them from out on the water. And they're pretty spectacular when you see them up close. They're massive, and they're extremely fast for the water. I mean, these are boats that approach 50 miles an hour, and that's blurry fast on the water, especially for a sailboat. I mean, no one had ever seen anything like this at the America's Cup. And so I have to say I was won over watching them in person. And then, you know, I guess later on I watched them. A lot of people watched them on TV, and I watched some replays. I thought they looked pretty good on TV as well. And NBC did a pretty good job of instituting all these new graphics, like we see in football now, to try to help explain the sport. So actually, I think that maybe the America's Cup is moving in the right direction. I don't know if they'll stick with the AC-72s, but I think it's the first step.
He's David Wharton of the LA Times talking America's Cup. Did the atmosphere, I guess the mood of the fans change from that first part of the week when the United States was facing a lot of adversity until the week after when they were making that historical comeback?
Yeah, the last few days was really electric out there. Because they did have these races, you know, in the bay, people could sit or stand on shore to watch. They had grandstands set up. I wasn't in that area, but In the main area, there was a big pier where people could stand at the end of the pier. In July, in August, there might be a couple hundred people out there watching some of these challenger races or practices. In the last few days, the pier was packed. They actually had to close it down the last day. There were thousands of people jammed in the pier and all the way down the pier. Even they couldn't see out in the ocean. They were watching on a large screen. And there was a lot more media, and it got pretty exciting at the end there.
At what point during the America's Cup did you realize that you were witnessing something historic and special?
I have to tell you, I don't think it was until the second of the last day. At the start, because these were such new boats, really it was a matter of the teams learning how to sail them. They really didn't have that much experience, and you knew that the teams were going to get better, the boats were going to get faster as the competition progressed. But really, New Zealand started out so far ahead of the U.S. because they had gone through the Challenger Series. They'd gone through a bunch of races against other Challenger boats, and they had so much more experience. They were so much faster at the beginning that it looked like it was going to be a wipeout from the start. And I kept expecting, they were up 8 races to 1. They only needed one more race to win the Cup. As the U.S. was mounting a comeback, I kept expecting New Zealand to close it out, to get one of those races. And at one point, they had a race won in very light winds, but they couldn't finish the course in the maximum amount of time. And so the race was called off. It was nullified, and the U.S. came back and won a few hours later. So it wasn't until the U.S. won and won races, their 7th and 8th races, and tied the score at 8-8, that I thought that it really became clear that this was kind of something special and maybe one of the greatest comebacks in sports history.
That's a huge debate that a lot of people were talking about, especially after Oracle Team USA won. Where would you rank this among greatest sports comebacks?
Well, I don't really think it matches something like the Red Sox and the Yankees when the Sox came back and not only beat the Yankees but then went on to break the curse and win the World Series. I kind of still rank that up near the top there, maybe at the top. I still look at maybe USC coming back against Notre Dame and winning 55-24, or the Bush Push. I mean, those are sports, football, baseball, basketball. Those are sports that I think we pay a lot more attention to. So I'd still maybe rate them a little bit higher on the scale. But this has got to be in the top 10 because never before has someone, either an athlete or a team, been so far down and had to win literally 8 times in a row to come back. So it's got to be in my top 10.
And of course, where does the America's Cup go from here? They've already had all this hype and the pageantry from a successful America's Cup, a great comeback. What does Larry Ellison do with it now going into years forward?
Well, I think one of the problems they still have to address, we mentioned these AC-72 yachts that were not only dangerous but very expensive. It costs about $100 million to mount a campaign, and that includes building one or usually 2 boats, hiring a bunch of people, and spending 2 years preparing. So my guess is, first of all, they have to decide what they're going to do with the boats. My guess is they may go down to a smaller version, the AC-45, which instead of 72 feet long is only 45 feet long. And that will cut the cost, and then they'll only have those 3 countries who challenge this time. Maybe you'll get 10 challengers, and it'll be a more exciting competition. And then they have to pick a spot. Ellison kind of battled with the San Francisco authorities. Their people were kind of disgruntled on both sides. Ellison didn't get what he wanted. San Francisco didn't think it generated as much revenue over the course of the summer as was predicted. But I'm guessing they'll end up back in San Francisco. They'll be sailing catamarans, but they'll be smaller and less expensive. And all of that will be sort of decided and announced early next year.
The ideal perfect world, where would you like to see the America's Cup?
Well, I think that they had the right idea holding it in a bay where people could watch from the shore, where the course was tight and television coverage. You could really get an idea of what was going on. In previous America's Cups all through the history, like I said, it was held way out to sea, and it was just sort of 2 boats out in the middle of a big blue screen. You really didn't have a whole lot of idea what was going on. Here you could see the course, you could get a feel for it, and so I think they really got it right and that's something that maybe could continue if they want these tight, exciting races. You know, if they want to stick with tradition, they're going to have to go back out in the ocean. But I like it in the bays like this. San Francisco Bay. There are certainly other windy bays around the world where they could hold it.
All right, he's David Wharton of the LA Times. Thank you for joining us on Fanatic Radio. I'd love to have you back on the show, especially as you noted you're covering you're going to be covering the Winter Olympics soon.
Yes, yeah, we're getting ready for that. Just was in Park City, Utah, where the U.S. Olympic Committee brought in more than 100 athletes to face the media, and then we'll be getting ready to look at the trials for all the different sports, and then head off to Sochi, Russia, in February.
All right, looking forward to that. Thank you once again for taking the time and joining us on the show.
All right, thanks very much.